I said sit down or be removed. The judge's voice thundered through the courtroom, but Adaobi Daniels didn't move. She stood trembling, not out of fear, but defiance. Her son had been expelled for defending himself. No lawyer would take her case. And now, even the courtroom meant to protect justice was trying to silence her. But what no one knew was that a single flash drive in her purse held the truth. And once it played, everything would change. The courtroom was stiff with formality, every sound muffled by tension. The judge's gavel had barely struck when the whispers started. Mrs. Adaobi Daniels, mid-40s, composed, dark-skinned, in a modest Ankara blouse, stood alone at the plaintiff's table. Her palms were trembling, though her face betrayed no fear. Behind her sat a sea of unfamiliar white faces, some avoiding her gaze, some smirking, some stone-cold. The defendant, a private school principal named Mr. Clarkson, white and wealthy, sat smugly across from her with a legal team twice her size. She was a single mother, a school janitor, and by all courtroom appearances, grossly outmatched. But what nobody knew was that Adaobi wasn't just fighting for herself. She was fighting for her 12-year-old son, Chuka, humiliated, expelled, and labeled a threat after defending himself in a bullying incident caught on camera, but conveniently edited before it was sent to the school board. Flashback to 2 weeks earlier. Chuka had always been a quiet kid, smart, gentle, a math genius who spent more time solving equations than talking to classmates. But that made him a target. For months, he'd endured name-calling. Monkey, charcoal, janitor's son. The bullying peaked when a group of older white boys cornered him behind the cafeteria and shoved him to the ground. He didn't fight back until one shoved him again and called him a mistake. The school surveillance caught the last 15 seconds, Chuka pushing one of the boys back. That's all the principal showed the board. The next day, Adaobi was summoned and told her son was expelled immediately. Back to courtroom, present day. I have every right to speak for my son, Adaobi said, her voice shaking as she stood. Judge Olcott, a white man in his 60s with a hardened face and gavel-happy fingers, looked down at her with disdain. You are not a licensed attorney. You do not get to lecture this court. Sit down or be removed. There was an audible gasp from the gallery. Adaobi's lips parted, but she didn't sit. I'm a mother, she whispered, trembling, and my son is not a threat. Bailiff. The officer took a step forward. Then, something unexpected happened. A young black man in the gallery stood up. He wore a crisp suit and carried a briefcase. Your Honor, he said calmly, my name is Attorney Darius Obasi. I'm a registered member of the bar and the Daniels family's counsel. Ms. Daniels had to speak in her son's defense before I arrived. I am now officially taking over. Silence gripped the courtroom. The judge's lips tightened. Proceed. Mr. Clarkson, the principal, took the stand. Attorney Obasi approached slowly. Calm. Calculated. You testified that Chuka Daniels was violent and aggressive, that you had no choice but to expel him. Yes, Clarkson replied. The footage clearly shows him shoving another student. I have a zero-tolerance policy. And the footage, you personally selected it. I merely provided what the security staff gave me. Obasi nodded. Interesting. He pulled a USB drive from his pocket and handed it to the court clerk. Your Honor, I'd like to submit full surveillance footage retrieved by a private investigator. It appears the school's footage was edited. Objections erupted from Clarkson's lawyers. The judge banged his gavel furiously, but it was too late. The video began to play. On the courtroom screen, everyone watched the full video. It started earlier than the school's version. Chuka, sitting on a bench, headphones in, reading a math workbook. The three boys approached, jeering, calling him names. Monkey, you don't belong here. Go clean a toilet like your mom. They pushed his backpack, spilled his books. He stood up, backed away, pleaded, stop. Then one boy shoved him to the ground. When Chuka stood, his fists clenched, lip bleeding, he pushed one back. That was the part Clarkson had submitted. The courtroom was silent. Mrs. Daniels wept quietly in her seat. The judge's face twitched. His gavel hung in the air, unused. Judge Olcott leaned forward. This footage was not in the original evidence file. No, Your Honor, Obasi replied, because someone didn't want the truth shown. Mrs. Daniels locked eyes with the judge. You silenced me, she said softly, because you thought I didn't know my rights, because you saw a black woman in traditional fabric and assumed I didn't belong here. There was no yelling, no dramatics, just the quiet, heartbreaking truth of a woman who had endured too much and was still standing. The judge swallowed hard. Then he did the unthinkable. I apologize to you, Ms. Daniels. This court made a premature judgment. The judge turned to the principal. Mr. Clarkson, you are hereby ordered to return Chuka Daniels to his rightful place in school, pending investigation into your conduct and possible suppression of evidence. You are relieved of administrative duty. Clarkson's mouth hung open. Gasps echoed through the courtroom. Tears streamed down Adaobi's face. Chuka clutched her hand. Justice, at least, a glimpse of it, had arrived. But just as they stood to leave, a stern-looking man in a gray suit entered the courtroom from the side door. He whispered something to Obasi, then handed him a sealed envelope. Obasi's face turned pale. Ms. Daniels, we have a problem, he said, voice low. This isn't over. The school board just filed a petition to remove you from Chuka's custody. They're claiming emotional neglect. Adaobi's breath caught in her throat. Her knees buckled. The system wasn't done. They'd lost the courtroom battle. Now they were going after her motherhood. News cameras swarmed the entrance as Adaobi stepped outside. Microphones stretched in her direction. Ma'am, what do you have to say about the custody petition? Did you coach your son to fight those boys for sympathy? Is this about revenge? She didn't answer, but deep inside, her soul burned. She never wanted a war. She only wanted her son to be treated like every other child. And now, they were trying to erase her from his life. Darius Obasi paced in his office, the petition in hand. The custody claim is coordinated, he said, eyes scanning documents. The school board filed it exactly 30 minutes after the judge's apology. That kind of timing, it was prepared before today's hearing. Adaobi sat silently, eyes red. They never expected you to fight back, he continued. And now they want to punish you for embarrassing them. But on what grounds? She asked. I've never laid a finger on Chuka. I worked 2 jobs to support him. He's never missed a meal. Obasi turned the page and sighed. They're calling it psychological weaponization. They're claiming you pushed him to confront racism for your own activist agenda. Adaobi stared blankly. An activist. She was a janitor, a widow, a mother, and somehow they had made her a threat. Adaobi sat beside her son, who had fallen asleep with his math workbook clutched to his chest. She smoothed his hair gently, tears silently rolling down her cheeks. A soft knock interrupted the moment. It was her neighbor, Miss Rukiat, holding a USB stick. Someone slipped this under my door with your name on it. Adaobi frowned. There was no note, just a drive. She plugged it into her old laptop. Her eyes widened. It was footage from inside the principal's office, a private conversation. On screen, Principal Clarkson sat with a tall man in a gray suit. That man was from the school board. Don't worry, the man said. Even if the judge rules in her favor, we hit her where it hurts. Get child services involved. Use the custody angle. No court's going to believe a janitor over a respected board. Clarkson smirked. Still think we should have just apologized to the kid? No, the man replied coldly. We make them regret fighting back. Adaobi covered her mouth in shock. She now had proof that the custody claim was not just retaliation. It was premeditated. But just as she processed the video, her phone buzzed. A voicemail from Chuka School. Hello, Ms. Daniels. This is Officer Hart from CPS. We received a call that your son was left home alone and found crying on the porch. We're dispatching someone tonight for a welfare check. Adaobi jumped up. Chuka. He had been asleep in his room just 10 minutes ago. She rushed to his bed. Gone. Window open. Her breath stopped. Had someone taken him? Obasi arrived minutes later. Police sirens already echoed in the distance. We have to move fast, he said. They're going to use this to fast-track custody removal. He grabbed her laptop. That video. They knew this would be their next move. If they stage an emotional breakdown, it gives weight to their claim. But where could Chuka be? Adaobi's mind raced. Then it hit her. The library. She had once told him, "If I'm ever late picking you up, stay at the library. It's always safe." They drove like lightning. And there he was alone, sitting on the steps, clutching his math book, eyes red from crying. "I thought, maybe they were taking you away," he said softly, not looking up. "I came here, so they couldn't find me first." Adaobi fell to her knees and hugged him tight. "You are never leaving my side," she whispered. But her relief was short-lived. A shadow appeared behind them. A police officer. "Ma'am, step aside. We have a protective order to detain the child until this matter is resolved in court." Obasi stepped forward. "You can't do that. This is based on false claims." The officer held up his tablet. "And this?" he asked, tapping the screen. It was a new video, circulating online. A deepfake. Adaobi yelling. Chuka crying. A clip that never happened, designed to look like abuse. "Someone's framing her," Obasi said, his voice icy. "And they're getting more desperate." The officer hesitated, then his phone rang. He answered and nodded. "Understood." He looked back at them. "You're free to go for now, but the investigation is still active." As he walked away, Obasi turned to Adaobi. "This just became bigger than a custody battle," he said. "Someone in the system, high up, is trying to bury this. The deepfake, the planted welfare call, the hush-hush custody filing, this is coordinated." Adaobi stared at him. "Why? Why me? Why my son?" Obasi exhaled. "It's not about you anymore. Someone's trying to set a precedent. If they silence you, they silence every mother who stands up." Later that night, Adaobi received a private message on her phone from an unknown number. "We know what you have. Delete the video, or next time, it won't be your son who disappears." Her hands trembled as she stared at the screen. Behind her, the bedroom window creaked slightly open, but she had locked it earlier. She turned slowly. The laptop with the footage. Gone. Adaobi hadn't slept. She sat at the kitchen table, eyes bloodshot, staring at the phone in her hands. The message from the unknown number kept replaying in her mind. "Delete the video, or next time, it won't be your son who disappears." She gripped a mug of untouched tea, heart pounding with fear and fury. Obasi arrived, visibly shaken after hearing about the break-in. "They're escalating fast," he said, checking the locks on the doors and windows. "This wasn't some random theft. This was targeted. Should I go to the police?" Adaobi whispered. Obasi hesitated. "Not yet. Not until we know who inside the system is compromised." Adaobi stared at him. "So what do we do?" "We head back. Quietly." That afternoon, Obasi drove Adaobi to meet someone. Not a lawyer. Not a cop. Her name was Ifeoma Nnadi, an investigative journalist, known for exposing corruption inside city departments. She worked for an independent media outlet and had a reputation for going after people with power and not backing down. Ifeoma wore no makeup. Her locks were tied back. She looked Adaobi straight in the eye. "I know about the school board," she said. "I've had sources warning me for months. What you experienced, it's not new, but it's never been this blatant." Adaobi blinked. "They said if I speak, they'll come for my son." Ifeoma leaned in. "Then let's make sure when they come for you, the whole world is watching." She slid over a tablet. "You said the video was stolen, but were you ever connected to Wi-Fi while playing it?" Adaobi's eyes widened. "Yes, at my neighbor's house, the night I watched it." Ifeoma grinned. "Then the footage might still be cached in your browser history. If it passed through the internet, I can trace it." As they worked on recovering the file, Obasi received a call from an unknown number. He hesitated, then answered. The voice on the other end was nervous. "Male. Young. Please. I can't talk long. I work at the Board of Education. I saw your name on a list. Threat level red. They're monitoring you. They're planning to discredit you in a press release this week, tie you to radical activist groups, and frame you as unstable. Obasi asked, "Why are you telling me this?" The man exhaled shakily. Because I have a sister. She went through the same thing. They took her kids. She never got them back." Then click. The call ended. Obasi looked at Adaobi. "They're prepping to destroy your public image next. It's not about court anymore. It's about reputation." The next morning, the headlines broke. "Mother behind viral courtroom video linked to militant parent group," says school board source. Anonymous staff describe Adaobi Daniels as emotionally volatile. Unfit to parent? CPS investigates woman behind fake video hoax. Adaobi's inbox flooded. Her phone rang endlessly. Some calls supportive, most laced with hate. Even neighbors who once waved politely now avoided her eyes. Miss Rookiette shook her head in disbelief. "They're trying to paint you as angry, as dangerous, as unstable." "Why?" Adaobi whispered. Obasi answered, "Because angry black mothers don't get sympathy. They get silence." But Ifeoma was one step ahead. She tapped her keyboard and pulled up a file. "I recovered part of the video from your browser cache," she said. "It's not complete, but it's enough to expose their plot. I'm uploading it to 3 separate encrypted clouds. They can't erase this one." Adaobi leaned in. "Then let's release it." But just as the video began trending under the hashtag Justice for Chuka, another message arrived. This time a video. Adaobi opened it with shaking hands. Chuka was walking home from school. A black SUV slowly crept behind him. A man stepped out. The footage froze. "You were warned," the caption read. "This is just a rehearsal." Her scream ripped through the room. Obasi took her phone. His hands were trembling. "They're not just attacking your character now," he said grimly. "They're threatening abduction." That night, Adaobi sat alone, staring at an old photo. Her late husband in his military uniform. Their wedding day. She whispered aloud, "I never told you this, Darius, but Chuka's father didn't die in combat. He died investigating military corruption. They made it look like suicide." Obasi turned slowly. He tried to expose stolen federal education, funds meant for inner-city schools. The same schools under this board's control. Adaobi's voice cracked. He died for trying to protect black students from a system stealing their future. And now they're coming for our son. Obasi's eyes narrowed. "This isn't just a school board cover-up," he said. "This is a legacy of corruption. And you're the key to finishing what he started." Just when they thought they had momentum, the court issued a sudden emergency injunction. All evidence submitted by Adaobi's side, including the recovered footage, was now legally barred from public release, pending an internal security review. "They got a judge to gag the case," Obasi muttered. "This judge has links to the same board." But Ifeoma smirked. "I expected that, so I gave the footage to someone else." "Who?" Adaobi asked. She looked at her phone. "Someone who doesn't care about gags." She opened Instagram. A popular celebrity, a Grammy-winning Nigerian-American artist with 8 million followers, had just posted the full video with the caption, "This mother was almost silenced. Not on my watch. Hashtag Justice for Chuka." It had 2.5 million views in 30 minutes. That night, Adaobi received a new letter delivered by hand. No return address. Inside, a court summons. She was being indicted for obstruction of justice and incitement of public unrest. Adaobi collapsed into a chair. "They're going to try to put me in jail." Obasi didn't blink. "That's exactly what they want, to make an example of you." "But if I'm arrested?" Obasi nodded. "They'll take Chuka permanently." Adaobi's eyes filled with fire. "Then we expose everything. Every name. Every fund. Every lie." But just then, a car screeched to a halt outside. Headlights blazed through the curtains. A dark silhouette stepped out. Then, a loud knock on the door. Agent Idris and a federal team stormed in, not to arrest Adaobi, but to protect her. "You're not the only one who's been threatened," Idris said firmly. "We've been tracking this corruption cell for over a year. Your husband's case, the school board's laundering, the deepfakes, it's all connected." Adaobi's legs gave way as the weight of it hit her. You mean this was real? All of it? Idris nodded. And your story just lit a fire under the entire operation. That viral video forced us to move. We've been waiting for a public trigger to unmask them without tipping them off. What do you need from me? Adaobi asked. Everything. Over the next 48 hours, Adaobi, Obasi, and Ifeoma sat in a secure safe house with federal investigators, unveiling the tangled web of deceit, bank transfers, fake grants, forged child protection reports, a secret boardroom where principals were coached on how to report problem families, usually black ones, and the most damning, a hidden database labeled Containment List, a digital blacklist of parents like Adaobi, labeled influential, non-compliant, or dangerous. The Daniels family was ranked number 3. Adaobi shook her head. All this because I wanted fairness for my son? No, Idris said, leaning forward, because you refused to be silent. The next morning, headlines exploded. Federal agents raid school board headquarters in corruption probe. Millions in education funds misused. Whistleblower mom triggered investigation. Principal Clarkson, Superintendent Green, and Judge Alcott indicted in systemic abuse ring. Images of the formerly smug officials being handcuffed and walked out made national news. Footage of Adaobi's courtroom video played on every network. Pundits debated. Parents rallied. Teachers came forward. Social media lit up with a hashtag. Hashtag they tried to silence her. Chuka's school issued a formal apology and reinstated him with honors. But it was too late for just a letter. Weeks later, Adaobi returned to court, not as a defendant, but as a plaintiff in a federal civil rights case. This time, she wasn't alone. Behind her stood dozens of parents, mothers, fathers, teachers, many black, many silenced for years. Obasi, now flanked by 3 federal attorneys, presented the case. The judge, a different one now, read the ruling aloud. The court finds overwhelming evidence of racial targeting, defamation, child endangerment, and obstruction of justice. The Daniels family is awarded $5 million in damages, along with a formal public declaration of innocence. Furthermore, the defendants are barred from holding public office or education positions indefinitely. Adaobi didn't cry. She just closed her eyes and whispered, "He can rest now, Nnadi. We did it." Weeks later, Adaobi sat across from Ifeoma in a live interview broadcast. "How do you feel, Adaobi?" Ifeoma asked. She looked straight at the camera. Tired, grateful, and angry. Not for me, but for the mothers who didn't have a Darius, or a video, or a second chance. They were silenced. They were erased. I was almost one of them. She paused. I'm no hero. I just didn't shut up. The audience applauded. But this wasn't just my win. This was for every child who was called a threat before they were seen as a person. Chuka stood at a podium, nervously gripping the edges. My name is Chuka Daniels. A year ago, they said I was dangerous. The crowd hushed. But I'm just a kid who loves math and my mom. Laughter. Applause. He accepted his National Youth Advocacy Award, the youngest ever recipient. In the front row, Adaobi clutched a small pendant around her neck, Nnadi's old military tag. Behind her, parents whispered. Teachers cried. Because they all knew. Justice hadn't just been served. It had been earned. Sometimes, the system counts on people being too tired, too poor, too unheard to fight back. But what happens when one mother refuses to sit down? Adaobi Daniels happened. This story isn't just fiction. It mirrors real life. There are Adaobis in every city, every school, every courtroom. So if you're watching this, and you've ever been told your voice doesn't matter, remember this. It does. And when we speak together, they have to listen. Drop an emoji in the comments if you've ever faced injustice and refused to back down. Let's build a community that supports and protects each other. Like, share, subscribe, and never forget, justice may be delayed, but it is never denied.